Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, April 27th, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And Russ Cohen has invited a friend in today. Russ, introduce
we have Mike Rogers, former three consecutive years with 100 points, which not that many NHLers have done. Played for Hartford, played for the Rangers. He's in my 100 Range Greats book. How you doing, Mike?
I am doing great, Russ. Great to be with you guys.
Appreciate it. I wonder if you could retell the story when Hartford was courting you and how they got you to sign with them.
Well, it was kind of an interesting process. I started my career with the Edmonton Oilers, got traded to Hartford, and years with the New England Whalers. And then that summer, when NHL expanded and the Whalers were one of the teams picked, it was a real trying summer for me because I think there was a lot of people out there that didn't feel I could play in the National Hockey League. And the Hartford Whaler management, you can include them in that process.
Really?
So, I took a pay and cut. I signed a two-way contract, the first two-way contract of my career. And I guess I approached camp with just a chip on my shoulder. I had something to prove, and it was more or less my career was on the line. If I don't produce, if I don't have a good training camp, if I don't start the season with the Hartford Whalers, my career might have been over. So I just dedicated myself that summer and wanted to prove everybody wrong and talk about things falling into place. It was just a phenomenal way to start my NHL career.
Only 105 points back-to-back seasons, right? Like just like that, that's incredible for the Whalers.
Yeah, not in your wildest dreams. You just kind of approach the season. I always remember a teammate of mine, Robbie Fatorik, and he says, you can set goals, but you maybe only set goals that are attainable. And, the first goal is to go to a training camp. The second goal is to meet the team. And the third goal is always to win the cup. And, that's a tough one to get. So
yeah,
I didn't put any pressure on myself to saying, what do I need to do? How many goals do I need to score? How many assists?
Sure. How
many points to be recognized as an NHLer? I just kind of approached it's the old cliche, every game at a time. But I did have something to prove every game, every shift, that if I didn't produce, there was somebody waiting to take my spot. So I think the drive was there more than it ever been in my career. And as I said, things worked out.
Mike, I've never gotten a chance to ask anybody this question, but since Russ brought that up, it's kind of interesting. I've always wondered what it was like to be on a WHL team and find out that you were merging with the NHL.
Well, as a kid, especially growing up in Canada, it's always about being an NHLer. As a kid, you never thought of being a WHA'er. Like
right.
League, and there was only one league in the world, and that was the NHL. So you're out playing street hockey, you're out on the ice all winter. You're somebody. I'm Gordie Howe, or I'm Dave Keon, or I'm a Toronto Maple Leaf, or whatever the case may be. And it was always about the NHL. And I think every parent wants their kid to be in the NHL, especially in Canada here. That's just the way it is. And I guess at about age 13, 14, I just won a city scoring championship, and I was kind of on my way and started to get courted a little bit with the junior hockey teams in the area. And that's when I realized that, maybe there is that opportunity. And anybody that looks at it when you're a young kid, 6, 7, 8, and your parents think you're going to make it to the NHL, well, it's a little bit harder than just saying that. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, there's a certain time in your youth where you realize that maybe you do have a chance and maybe you have to dedicate yourself. So, I never finished high school. I left high school to play junior hockey here in Calgary. And, I was fortunate that things did work out because, no schooling to fall back on. If I didn't get an NHL career, would have been very tough. But the NHL career didn't happen for me right off the bat. It was the World Hockey Association. They offered me a great contract, a chance to play with the Edmonton Oilers. Bill Hunter was phenomenal for me.
Yeah.
And 5 years in the WHA. And then all of a sudden, wow, we're in the NHL. Yeah, and not only myself, but every player in the WHA. I've been there for years. Just it was kind of, oh my God, this is completely different now. What do I have to do to be a better player?
Yeah, it must have been incredible.
Well, Mike, let me ask you, because the circumstances with players that I cover the Leafs, and I'm aware of Leaf history, and I know players like Dave Keon, who you played with in Hartford, and Paul Henderson and Bernie Parent. They all left the Leafs. Actually, your line mate Blaine Stoughton also did in the mid '70s because Ballard didn't want to pay competitive salaries. You were drafted by Vancouver in the 5th round in '74. You were also drafted by the Oilers. Did Vancouver make any kind of offer, or is the offer was so good from Edmonton you just had to take it?
Well, what had happened, and again, one of those interesting stories, the World Hockey Draft was before the NHL draft.
Okay.
And I was picked by the Edmonton Oilers, and, the word got out. I don't know if it was through my agent or whatever the case may be, but that I had already signed a WHA contract.
Okay.
So my agents didn't call me after the NHL draft, and I thought, okay, geez, 5th round, because I just came off 142 points in junior.
Yeah.
And I was projected, being a small guy, I was still projected to go in the top 3 rounds. All of a sudden, you go in the 5th round, you're going, oh, this isn't good.
Right.
Then I got a call from the general manager, Jake Milford in Vancouver, and he phoned me personally, and he says, I don't know what's going on, but your agents won't talk to me. I went, what are you talking about? He says, and then he carried on a little bit more and said, well, I understand you've signed with the World Hockey Association, but we're still interested in you. And I kind of just about fell off my chair and said, well, that is definitely not the case, Mr. Milford. I haven't signed any contract. I was waiting for the NHL. So I negotiated more or less Vancouver through myself and not my agents.
Wow.
Got offered a good contract. I guess the deciding factor was I was more or less guaranteed to start with the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
Money was pretty well the same. Vancouver was a 2-way contract, and also Vancouver said you're probably going to start the year in the minors. And in my head, I said, I believe that I've got the talent to maybe play at the highest level. So all of a sudden, they're telling me that I don't even before I've stepped on the ice in the training. So it made my decision easier to go to the Edmonton Oilers, because to me, I still looked at it as a major professional league. It wasn't like I thought it was downgrading. And as I enjoyed my time in Edmonton and then with Hartford.
So, Mike, then you went, and you're the points per game leader actually for Hartford at 1.31, which is really high. That's better than Ron Francis and some other great players that played for him. But then you went to the Rangers, and maybe you had the right coach at the right time too. In Herb Brooks, you had the smaller players, the Smurfs. You were one of them, and you guys were high flying, high scoring. It
was fun. It was completely different than any type of hockey I'd ever played, and all of a sudden he brought this motion into the game, and I still love the way that he approached carrying the puck up ice. If you didn't have a play, why throw the puck in and give them the puck?
Yep.
Turn around, come up as 5-man units. And nobody ever thought about it back then. That hockey is, when you think of it, you're out there with 6 players, 5 skaters. Why not utilize all 5 players on the ice? And that's what Herb Brooks was all about. So some of those players came from the U.S. Olympic team. We got smaller, we got faster, and
we had Pierre LaRouche on the other day talking about that too.
Yeah, and I firmly believe that first year I thought we had the team to win the Stanley Cup. Unfortunately, we ran into the Islanders, and in a great series, we lost out to that. But I think if we would have got by the Islanders, I might have had a Stanley Cup. At least that's the way I look back at it.
Mike, I look at that first Hartford Whaler team, 79-80, and as a kid, I'm watching Sabres games on local cable, and I remember Hartford coming in to Buffalo in March, and I believe late in the year you get Bobby Hull from Winnipeg, and that night it was the Hull, Keon, Gordie Howe line. I'm like, you don't see that every day unless it's in all-star games. And like, as a younger Canadian kid, what were your thoughts when you saw those 3 guys together?
Michael, unbelievable. You can't fathom that these 3 Hall of Famers could be not only on the same team but on the same line. And as a kid growing up, I had 2 idols, Dave Keon and Gordie Howe.
Wow.
I had posters in my bedroom. I had scrapbooks on them. I had every card. I cut their pictures off cereal boxes. It was just never ending for me, for Dave Keon and Gordie Howe. And I'll still always remember that day that, here I am in the dressing room, and I look across, and there's Gordie right across from me, and Dave is just down from me. And I'm going, I don't care what happens. It cannot get any better than this. This is what it's all about. I don't care if I ever score a goal, an assist. I'm in the dressing room with 2 tremendous players, my idols. And then you're right, Mike, all of a sudden you got Bobby Hull join the team. And it's just a wow factor. And I think at that time, I'm 26, 25 years old? Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm 10, 12 years old again. I'm sitting in my stall, and I'm scared to say a word. I'm just keying on everything they do, their mannerisms, what they're saying, even how they're tying up their skates. And I probably was late to go out and warm up just because I was watching these three guys and so excited about stepping on the ice with them. It was just it's one of the truly amazing things.
I know how hockey players are, like they're so polite, especially Canadian hockey players are so polite, and I can't imagine like the room, what it must have been like with all three of those guys. And I'm sure those three were talking to each other, and you guys must have all been pretty much in the same boat, right? Like everybody else was just, this is unbelievable.
Oh yeah, I don't think I closed my mouth for about 5 minutes because everybody's jaw is way down, and you just and seriously, and even the veterans, the Ricky Lees and the Brad Salwas around that team at that time, and just even seeing them, it changes a whole dynamic of a dressing room.
Yeah.
But what was amazing about those three individuals is they weren't Mr. Hockey. They weren't Dave Keon, the best player to ever play for the Maple Leafs. Bobby Hull, one of the greats of all time, considered one of the top 5 players ever. They were teammates. They were buddies. And that's the way that they made you feel. So even though I was in awe and nervous to be in that room and to be on the ice with them, within 10, 15 minutes, you didn't care anymore because we all know Gordy was a jokester. Dave Keon was a wonderful guy. Bobby was just, you can't find a better person. So all of a sudden, you just kind of sit back and go, okay, he's got the same jersey on as me. Sure, the names are a little bit different on the back of the jersey. Right. But no, they became friends instantly. And, you got kind of rid of that awe factor.
So think about that, just, and I'll let rest of the question, but think about that. Like in the span of, what was it, like 2 years? You go from the New England Whalers of the WHA to the Hartford Whalers of the NHL to Bobby Hull, Gordie Howe, and Keon.
Yeah, no, it's truly amazing, and and to go from some of the worst rinks that we played in the World Hockey Association. I remember the old rink in Chicago. You had to dress in shifts because the dressing room was so small. All of a sudden, now you're in the NHL. Walk into the Montreal Forum. You're going to the Maple Leaf Gardens. You're going to Boston. Like just all these rinks that you've grown up seeing. Now you're stepping into them. And, we talked about Bobby and Gordy and David. Well, I remember the first time we went to the Montreal Forum and we go down below into the dressing room. Well, there's Jean Beliveau greeting us, shaking everybody's hand, saying, welcome to the NHL. And I still say he was there to see Gordy, but, I'm kind of telling everybody, oh, no, he wanted to see me personally. Like he wanted to shake my hand. But man, talk about a wow factor, meeting Jean Beliveau. And I just, I'm on cloud 9. I don't even think I touched the ground until I got in the dressing room. So it's just those things that happen, once you get into the NHL, it's I'll never forget.
That's awesome.
Mike, I watched you play, but I don't remember you being a penalty killer, but I just looked it up and you had 1 year where you had 4 shorthanded goals and another year you had 5. That's a lot of shorthanded goals. What got you on the penalty kill?
Well, it's funny. And you look at the way hockey's played today, you have to roll 4 lines. You have to have designated penalty killers. You have to have guys in the power play. Everybody has a role. Well, back then it was more or less 3 lines, and you played your top players as much as you could. And I was fortunate the coaches I had, and as we all know, I was brutal defensively, but killing penalties allowed me to use my speed. Yeah. And so, back then the penalty kill was the old box. You stay in a box, you don't move from that. I said, heck with that. If there's a chance to get after a loose puck or break up a pass, I'm going to take that chance. I might get scored against, but there's that opportunity. And, the goals started to come. And so, I tell people probably in my heyday, I was playing 25 to 30 minutes a game, which is unheard of for a forward in today's game. Yeah. But I did. I killed penalties, played the power play, took a regular shift. So I so enjoyed killing penalties because it's that risk factor. That if the opportunity is there, you take it. And so for some reason they kept me out there. And
you got to make the defense nervous all the time because they see you buzzing around, and they're that's a hard thing the defender has to pay in the back of his head. That's amazing. I mean, that's just got to be fun, like a win-win situation for you.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, and the more ice time, you ask any player, the more ice time they get, the better they feel. So I never had that fatigue factor. I just couldn't wait to step on the ice.
Mike, your line mate, and actually he was your line mate in both Hartford. I don't know if he played for the Rangers in 83, 84, but Blaine Stoughton was always somebody. My brother's an old-time Leaf fan, and he remembered Blaine in the mid-'70s playing for the Leafs. And again, he was another one of these guys that probably got gypped by Harold Ballard and went to the WHA for a couple years. But his first 4 years in the NHL, 2 of them with you, He scored 200 goals in 4 seasons. He's extremely underrated in terms of a sniper. And the only bad thing is he had to wear those Cooperalls for a year.
Oh, and he let everybody know about that too. The thing about Blaine, and you're right, Michael. He had that touch. There's not many guys that can do what he could do from the top of the circle in. And he knew his limitations. He wasn't the greatest skater, but, for the 2 years that I played with him in Hartford, we had an understanding that it was my puck until we got it inside the offensive zone.
Right.
And then, boy, if I didn't give it to him when he was open, he let me know about it. But that's the way that things work between us. And I knew if I gave it to him at the top of the circles, there was a great chance of him putting the puck in the net or creating a scoring chance. And what people don't give him enough credit for, and he was skilled. And I still tell people that Blaine Stoughton tied for the goal scoring lead in the league one year. Nobody knows who Blaine Stoughton is, and that's a real shame. But he was tough. He would pay the price to go to the front of the net, and he scored a lot of goals from the 6-10 feet out and just making sure that he found any loose puck. But if I can tell a quick story about Blaine, it's after that first year when I think it was 56 goals he scored.
56, tied with Simmer and Danny Gare. I'm a stat nerd, so there you go. Yeah,
Danny Gare, my old line mate in junior. So it was great to see that. But I remember Blaine Stoughton's second year in their interview. And they ask him, he says, well, have you set any goals? And he says, yeah. He says, I always set goals. Well, can you share them with us? Sure. What are they? He says, I want to play 80 games. I want to score 80 goals, no assists, and be minus 80 because I don't want to be known as a playmaker or as a defensive player. And that's the way Blaine was. He just had one thing on his mind and put the puck in the net, and that's not a bad way to approach a game.
No.
That's phenomenal. That's great. Oh, my gosh.
I have one more for you, Mike. I'm in South Jersey here, so where I skate is Johnny Gaudreau's father's rink, and you've got Johnny in your market, and you guys are similar in size, similar in point totals. I'm wondering what you think of him, and have you guys met?
I've never met him. No, I did the radio for 12 years with the Flames, but he came after I'd retired from that. So I've met. I shouldn't say I've met him, but just very briefly.
Yeah.
Talk about a tremendous talent. Like what he can do. He can do things that there's only a handful of players can do in the National Hockey League. And when that puck is on his stick, he's electrifying. And I always tell people it's not how fast people are, it's how quick they are in today's game.
Right.
And Gaudreau is one of the quickest. You look at him, he's a Patrick Kane. He's just got that factor that players don't have. And he is much faster, much quicker when the puck is on his stick. He takes people out of their seats. And what more can you ask? I still say hockey players are entertainers. The more you can entertain the fans, I think the better off you are. And Johnny Gaudreau is one of those special players.
Mike, last one for me. As we already covered, you started your NHL career with, Gordie Howe and Dave Keon and Bobby Hull. You end your career in Edmonton playing with some guy who wore 99. Did you walk up to him in the 8 games that you played and said, you got to work on your playmaking skills because you only had 163 assists that year?
The first game I get there, we beat LA, I believe it was 8-1 or 8-2. And him and Yari Curry put on a show that game. And every time they scored, I'm up off the bench. And finally the guys are grabbing me by the back of the sweater and saying, hey, sit down. You're going to see this every single game. And I had to play against Wayne, but, until I was a teammate of his, I knew how phenomenal he was, but you really didn't appreciate him because you're worried about your game more than you were worried about the opposition's game. But just being in that dressing room and the presence that he had, and Mark Messier and Paul Coffey, that list went on and on and on. And even though I was maybe the oldest guy in the room at that time or one of the oldest guys, I still felt like a fan.
Yeah.
Just seeing what they'd accomplished, the way they approached every game, the players that were in there. And I still tell people I sat beside Wayne in the dressing room. And what was interesting about him is that everybody would go and work on their sticks. We used the wooden sticks back then. So you're firing, you're curving them, you got the torch. Well, Wayne would sit in the dressing room and put about 3 or 4 sets of gloves in front of him and put his hands in them, give him a squeeze, move him around a bit. And then he'd pick a left and a right from the group of gloves he had. And that would be his way of approaching the game. So it wasn't about what he could hold a 2x4 in his hands. He did what he did. But for him, it was about the feel. So he would try gloves instead of working on a stick.
It's an awesome story. It was so nice meeting you, Mike. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
God, anytime, guys. Always enjoy talking hockey and especially talking about my idols. And it's been fantastic being with you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the memories.
Stay
Okay,
safe,
take care, everybody.
okay?
Stay safe.
Take care now. It's Mike Rogers joining us today. It was that was
great.
I mean, I was doing a quick count, right? There may be only like 12 guys that have had 3 consecutive 100-point seasons in the history of the game. Like, if you look at this, it's a long list, so I couldn't do it because there was some big chunks, but it couldn't have been more than 15. There's no way.
And he did it in his first 2 NHL seasons.
Well, 3, Mike. 3, I know, but he had, yeah.
Right. I mean, three in a row. But in Hartford, his first 2 years, but coming right out of the NHL WHA merger. And I one regret I had is not to ask him about, because it was a very sort of questionable situation when it came to the WHA teams and the players that they could retain from their WHA rosters to change over to the NHL. I believe, like in Quebec, they got to keep Marc Tardif and Riel Cloutier, who was a Chicago Blackhawk first round pick. But the one that's obvious is Gretzky never went through the draft.
I know.
He went right to the Indianapolis Racers as an 18-year-old. He never went. And I was talking to an agent a while back, and he says that was always, like, especially when they found out how good this guy was, that like nobody had a chance to draft him. He just was gifted to the Edmonton Oilers, and that pissed him off a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that, because in a way that did happen that way. I have a I have a WHA DVD that I got. They do sell them. People could find the guy's name is Mike Sansome. Might be Mike Sansome. Sells them on Facebook because he was involved in the WHA. It's really great to watch it, because me growing up in New York, I didn't get any WHA games. You didn't see him anywhere.
Yeah, no. I mean, I did. I mean, my first exposure to the WHA was the 4 teams joining the NHL. I mean, I know that people in Toronto, like Jeff Merrick used to go to Toronto Toros games.
Right.
He saw WHA, and but yeah, it's. I mean, I wish there was more film of those days just to see some of those players.
Well, that's what I'm saying. This DVD set has a lot of it. Like there's quite a bit on there, so that's why I think it's worth it. Eck, I did want to mention I got another update from the KHL, and there was one player on there that I thought was interesting, Adam Liska, a Czech player. He was really good in the World Juniors. He's not like a high scoring guy, but he does a lot of other things well. He's got some grittiness. He's a decent skater, and right now he's a Slovak, and he got signed for another year, but he's only 20 years old, and you have to wonder, like, a guy like that is probably on quite a few radar for the NHL. But what I did also notice in its release is that on May 1st they could sign UFAs, and because the NHL is in this holding pattern, and because there's going to be a flat cap, we're pretty sure of it.
Yeah.
You've got to believe there's players that, if they don't feel like they're going to have a strong chance to get an NHL contract, they may jump so they can get a contract. Because, as an example, like, in the chat room, I said, hey, Tyler Pitlick, maybe the Flyers bring him back, maybe they don't. It's either Grant or Pitlick, right? It's one or the other, especially with the signing they made of Sandin. So based on that, one of those guys may have trouble getting a contract. Those kinds of players may have to go to the KHL because there's not going to be as many jobs in the NHL next year. It's just not going to be.
And we don't know the status of the American Hockey League right now.
Right.
And you talk about how the NHL could be affected financially regarding, everything that we're going through right now. I mean, I heard some talk about the American Hockey League. That is a gate-driven league.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And,
I shouldn't say 100, 98%.
Right, and not all the teams are owned by their NHL clubs. Some of them are independently run, and it's going to be impossible for those teams to be able to not lose, a sizable chunk of money if they can't have fans, or at least some fans in the stands. So that's another, and that's something, we're talking about not only like the Hlinka Gretzky tournament getting canceled, the Calder Cup playoffs getting canceled, everything getting canceled, but next year the CHL, the American Hockey League, and the NCAA. I mean, in terms of development of the players that are eventually going to get to the NHL, this is a big thing because they may not play or their schedules will be altered.
And that's why if there's some guys that are sort of, if teams are sort of on the fence with some guys, I could see more overagers getting drafted again, simply because then at least you could throw them in the AHL when they're ready. Or at least you could bring them to camp because they're ready for camp, and then you see what happens with the other leagues. But they may do that. That and then more Euros. Remember last year, 5th round on, we saw a ton of Euros. That's probably going to happen again.
Well, the question will be, the reality is right now that if the season continues and I think we're getting more and more optimistic that it's going to, there's going to be sizable taxi squads on these teams.
Yep.
simply because there is no AHL team to draw from. So you're probably going to have, you have a 23-man roster. I will bet you anything that the rosters will be 30 or 33 or something like that, because in case somebody gets infected or in case somebody gets hurt, you're going to have to draw players from. But what's going to happen next year if you've got all your entire AHL roster that's not playing games? There's probably going to be taxi squads. There's probably going to be large taxi squads with these teams. And what do you do with players like, and I'll use the example of Nick Robertson, the Leafs 2nd-round pick from last year. He had a great year in the OHL. He scored, I think it was 55 goals. There was even talk about him, having a chance to make the NHL next year. Probably the best thing for him would be to go back to the OHL, get stronger, have another year of maturity. What happens if the OHL doesn't play games?
Right.
Do you keep him and then allow him to practice with the team? And is that as good as playing another year in the OHL and playing in the World Junior?
I mean, at that point, they're probably going to risk it and try it.
Right.
Because there's, better than him not playing at all.
Right.
And so there's definitely going to be some development issues. There's no question. Now, I did see an article on CNBC that, like, there's an architectural firm right now that deals with social distancing as far as stadiums and designing them for that way, right? And so at first, your first thought is, well, it's only going to be temporary.
Yeah.
But there's another COVID virus on the way. I already read about it. So what if it isn't temporary? What if it rolls into next year and maybe even the year on? Not to say we're all going to be at home all the time. We won't be. But as far as social distancing, that could be here for a long time. Like, we don't know yet. And that's why it's going to affect every sport. Hockey is going to get affected at the gate because now maybe, less than baseball, because baseball has, 35 to 40,000 seat stadiums, the NFL too. They're not going to be able to pack them in the way they were. But like, as an example, remember we looked at TD Garden when they did their redo, people were complaining that they were very close to each other. Now they may either opt for selling every other seat, or they may have to close down certain sections. Yep. They may have to limit how many people are in a luxury box. I don't think there'll be standing room only anymore, or there'll be a limit for that. Like, these things, and Mike even made a great point, when you go into the bathroom, when you're going to get something to eat. These are all good things that are probably going to have to change the model. Like, we all saw, like, how all the restaurants in our neighborhoods are now doing takeout or touchless takeout. Yeah. They may have to make similar changes in the arenas.
It's going to have to happen. And I think we're going to be, I think going out wearing masks is going to be a regular thing for a couple years. Like, I don't think that's going away. And unfortunately, I think that we're going to be going to games in the press box or all this stuff with masks on, because it's just.
I like my eyes. I think my eyes are my best feature, so I don't mind wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Betty Davis eyes.
I don't know. That's for somebody else to decide, not me.
It's a booming business in making of interesting masks. It's going to become part of your like social it's going to become style. It's going to become.
We could make a Hockey Buzz mask for Patreon.
About that.
I was going to say, send me one, Act, because I really don't want to like. There's enough pop-up ads on Facebook right now for like professional sport masks. It's like, I really don't want to. I was going to send you the link for this, Russ. Do you want to pay $49.99 for a Mets mask?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but also these entrepreneurs out there, they're like, now we're not, all of a sudden it went from $49.99 to selling masks like 3 for $25. So I think they see, wait a second, maybe the masks aren't going to be needed, and let's get rid of them now because we've made all these.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you got to admit, Bazooka Joe was ahead of his time. Anyhow,
they're going to be needed for a long time to come, and there's just different things like that are going to be a reality. I mean, who knows? There's an article, and someone brought it up in the chat room today. There's an article now that one of the vaccines is way ahead of schedule. That's great,
but it still has to go through testing, even being ahead of schedule.
I listened to an interview
December, the earliest would be December, they say. So
yeah. I listened to an interview with a doctor who had spent 30 years at the FDA, and he basically said 12 to 18 months in terms of the window for a vaccine is like best case scenario, like hitting 4 home runs in a game. It's like it's more than likely a couple years. And the thing is, it could be like the flu vaccine where it really doesn't have the right effect on everybody. It's not going to eliminate it. It's going to mitigate its effects.
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean, if we have to take him on this show, I'll let Mike go first. I think that's only fair.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, the economic impact now could affect ticket prices. It could affect hockey-related revenue as a result. Like, this whole thing's going to change. It's,
that was when Russ and I were talking about this. If they say, for example, the KeyBank Center in Buffalo has to take out 2/3 of the seats to have one seat and then 2 spaces and then another seat like that way. First of all, that makes it virtually impossible for groups of people to go because they want to sit together. So that's one detriment or one deterrent right there. The other thing is, don't you think the NHL teams are probably going to increase their ticket prices because only 5,000 people are going to games instead of 17 or 18? More than likely for them to be able to survive financially, instead of one ticket costing $100, it's going to be one ticket costing $300.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be 5,000. I think you'd be able to, if it's a 17,000 seat stadium, I think you might be able to get like 10 to 12.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, it does worry. It does make you think that prices could go up, and by next year. I mean, this is something the NHL certainly doesn't want to talk about, but it's going to happen. Like, we're going to be talking about this stuff, Eck. I mean, and then it all does come down to, again, affecting the cap, affecting hockey-related revenue.
Yeah.
All those things start to get affected because, unless they're able to sell more items, sell more on the gambling end, sell more advertising, maybe the TV deal helps subsidize some of that, maybe.
Well,
I mean, the TV deal will help, and the TV deal can get high. You can bid more for the TV deal when people can't go to games too. We realize that,
right? Yeah.
If you can renegotiate, I can see the TV deal is getting much higher, and that will definitely be beneficial to the NHL eventually. Eventually, this will all be fine. Eventually, people will go back to games, and maybe the TV deal will be higher and all this stuff. It's just a matter of how long that is going to take. That's the reality. The interesting thing that came out this weekend, and it wasn't on the hockey page, but in contrast to what the plan is for the NHL, Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN came out and said that NBA teams are going to get together. The players are going to get together as soon as May 1. Now that's dependent on each individual venue where the teams are based. I'm sure the New York Knicks aren't getting together on May the 1st, or if they are, it's probably in Connecticut or Rhode Island or someplace like that. But that's to my mind is encouraging in terms of the fact that that's supposedly the most cautious league of them all, and they're getting together way earlier than I thought, and they're getting together way earlier than the NHL is getting. So that, I think if for people who are skeptics about the NHL getting back together, I don't think the NBA would be starting to, form practices and training camps and things of that nature in early May if there wasn't a chance that they were going to get their season together. The other thing was, and we talked about it on Friday with Kevin, was what venues, 4, 8, 12, whatever it is in terms of where the NHL are going to play. And I can just say this, I'm skeptical. I hope it happens. I'm skeptical about Toronto because okay, I can see the positives of a smaller place like Buffalo, but as somebody pointed out to me, Buffalo,
they apparently part of the plan is if you have an NHL sized locker room in the building, then that's a venue that you can play. And the Harbor Center does not. We've seen those locker rooms, Russ, when we interviewed players at the World Junior. They're very small.
Yeah.
And only one of the two locker rooms at KeyBank Center, the voluminous Sabre locker room, is, there's enough social distancing there. The road locker room is like a shoebox in comparison. So that might prevent them from, having that as a potential venue. That's not the case in Toronto, but in Toronto, you've got two buildings. One is the Marlies building, the Coca-Cola Coliseum. The other one's Scotiabank. The locker rooms in Coca-Cola Coliseum are small. So, and I'm sure they have enough practice facilities. I'm sure there's plenty of hotel space. But if that's a prerequisite of these teams, of these cities hosting these players to prevent players from getting sick, then I don't think Toronto is a likelihood, and I don't think Buffalo is a likelihood.
Right. I mean, it'll be interesting to see where they end up. I still think that part is still up for debate. I think they're all still talking about it with those groups that they have. Another thing that's going on Twitter, Eck, we talked about it the other day, but we didn't get your input, and now it's kind of taken another turn. The NWHL is going to get a Toronto team, and that's something where, the CWHL at the time said, oh, yeah, it's never going to happen. And the PWHPA said that was never going to happen, but I told you I thought it would happen. Now, the interesting thing is, if the PWHPA was going to hope for the NHL to sort of get in on the action with all of this going on, I don't think the NHL is getting in on women's hockey at all in the next 2 to 3 years, because they have trouble with their own league now.
It's not just their own league. It's also like, we talked about the AHL. Like the AHL is their good. If they're going to put money into another league, it's going to be the AHL. They have to do that. And then even the ECHL plays into this too. Like that's another, they also are vaguely connected to NHL teams. Some of them more than others. And those leagues, and it's nothing against the women's league. I just don't think that this is the time for them, obviously, for the NHL to get involved. And it's a shame that the NHL didn't get involved a long time ago, because they should have when times were good. That's the kind of thing that frustrates you, because they could have for sure. Yeah. There were times when they definitely could have, and they should have. There's no two ways about it.
Well, Russ, I thought it was particularly hilarious, and I cannot remember who posted it on social media, but somebody said, well, they're naming a new team in Toronto, the NWHL, but they didn't name a team name and they didn't name any of the players. So how realistic is this? I'm like, excuse me, do you think right now anybody gives a crap about what the name of the Toronto team is?
Well, if it's not realistic, then I guess the NHL team in Seattle is not realistic either, because they haven't named anything either.
That still baffles me. I don't know what Seattle's doing there. They have a perfect chance to do.
They've had all these months to give us something. Give us one day to write about it. Give us a little song and dance. We've got nothing.
I got to look up when the Vegas Knights named their team versus when they started playing. Like how far ahead it was.
I think it was at the winter. It was like around the Winter Classic. I think it was like in January.
Right. So that would still be a little bit off, right? I mean, because I think the thing is we've known that Seattle was coming in the league for longer than we knew Vegas was coming in the league for. So
right, but wasn't there talk, Russ, about them naming it before this draft because it would be 1 year away?
Actually, I heard it was going to be named like a few weeks ago, and that hasn't happened. So I don't really know when it's going to happen. I can tell you this, though, and I'm probably going to find out more about this. Tomorrow is actually the NWHL draft. And so they're going through a full 5-round draft tomorrow. So, again, for those people that thought that was, a league that was going to have a problem and go bye-bye, it's not. And if the PWHPA is saying they're going to have teams, like when are they going to have a draft?
Yeah. That's a really good point.
They just don't want to yield to the NWHL.
Right. That's what it is. So they're just going to try and keep this thing going a little bit. But again, this is at 6:45 tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday. It looks like they're going to have a draft. So so that's interesting. I'm probably going to tune in. I'm going to try and find out more. Maybe we can get a guest or two on the show. I'll see. But I do think that it's great for them to still be going through this right now to show everybody, hey, you know what? this is the league. If you want to watch women's hockey, if you want to get involved, watch our draft, watch our players. I think right now it's a great message in a time where people are dying for sports.
Yeah, and I was so a little bit more about the draft, and there is a definite battle. There's no two ways about it going on between the owners and the NHL on one side wanting this thing to happen earlier, and the GMs and scouts and people like that wanting to do things the way they're always done and having it after the season. Which, and obviously everybody sees everybody's point on this. But I get that. I really do get the sense still that this is happening in June. From talking to people, and I think that there's, I know we had Kevin on here, and Kevin's not convinced that it's happening in June, and I'm not convinced it's happening in June, but I'm just I'm thinking that at the end of the day, in my experience covering this league, the owners win.
Yeah, but
they win, and so the GMs are like, this is not how we normally do things, but no one has much sympathy for anybody who says that right now. Like normally how we normally do things, it doesn't count to anybody right now. So.
I let's just say this. I will yield to Kevin's opinion on what we were talking about on Friday. The fact that, great. We know that the NFL draft drove traffic to ESPN for 3 days, and we know they got great ratings. NHL and the NFL are two different animals.
Of course they are.
And you're not going to get rating, MS or NBCSN will get ratings, and I'm sure TSN and Sportsnet will definitely in Canada. But it's not going to have the kind of impact of just of these teams in the league being on the radar to the point that it's really beneficial. So let me
argue against that for a second. And listen, I have my opinions on it. And then Kevin and I we talked about this last night. We had our family feud where my family beat his family, by the way, last night. Just in the family feud last night on the Allens and the Eklunds last night.
Was Steve Harvey busy?
Yeah, no. One of his kids played Steve Harvey beautifully. He did a great job.
That's great.
But we talked about it even further. And the reality is, we're whoever you talk to is the person whose opinion you're bringing to the table for the most part, because, we don't know, like neither he nor I has any say in this thing. We're just talking to who we're talking to. Right. And I made the argument with him on the phone, and I do kind of feel this too, that, you can sit there and say, yeah, of course it's not the NFL draft. The NHL doesn't have that fan base at all. That's not the kind of thing we have here. So, but what the NHL does have, and why the NHL has grown more than it's ever grown before, and this has happened since like 2004, since around then, since the lockout. The NHL finally has put together a group of kind of casual fans, which is something that the NHL didn't have forever. Like that was always the thing about the NHL. Like the NFL has a group of fans, hardcore fans, like every league does, but the NFL also has a huge group of casual fans, and that those casual fans, like I'm like a casual NFL fan. Like I'll watch the NFL game. Yeah. But I'm not a hardcore like you guys are necessarily, but I'll definitely love the sport. I don't want to follow every in and out of it, but I love to watch the games, that kind of thing. So that's the deal. The NHL has lived its entire existence on hardcore fans without casual fans. And I
think that's true, actually, except for the Rangers. The Rangers have plugged into a gajillion casual fans for tickets, more than most, probably because of their ticket prices.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I think that, and the Rangers also done a good job at, and all these the original 6 teams, I would guess, I think all around have more casual fans than anybody else.
They do. I think you're right about that.
Because everyone's grown up with them existing in their world. Like they everybody said, everybody who's here like remembers them when they were a kid or whatever. Their parents liked them or somebody liked them. So
yeah,
that's the case. But I think, where I feel the NHL draft in June is most important is, first of all, you do have to do something for your hardcore base. You do have to do something for them. I think that's very vitally important, that you do need to do that. Like, in Hockey Buzz, we keep working really hard because we do need to keep the hardcore base, even if we're not making any money or losing money, we're going to keep doing things to the hardcore base. Now the NHL has the ability to also have like a bigger casual base, which they've had, like I said, I think since like 2004, 2005, the NHL casual base is much higher than it's ever been. And this is another chance to grow that by putting a draft out right now. This is another chance to get like a little bit more of like, show some really great highlights in the middle of the draft and do a real fun thing and have it really, have people see hockey for what it is. It feels like it's more important than ever for me, in my opinion, to do it now in June than it has been in the past, because just the whole concept of, okay, we're going to try to squeeze it in between the 2 seasons that we're going to have, which is going to be very little time at all. just so we can keep the trades like we normally did and all that stuff. It feels kind of it feels self-serving, but it's really just wasting the concept of this opportunity you have. Like you have a golden opportunity here. So, Mike, do you agree with that or disagree with that?
I mean, it's an opportunity, but I just don't know how impactful of an opportunity it is. I agree with you that they need the league needs to maintain some sort of footprint, but I just don't know how much of a footprint. I mean, yes, for us, yes, for the lifers, the super fans, or the people who cover the sport. It'll give us something to write about. It'll give us something to talk about, trades and things of that nature. But I think for 90% of the fan base, that only comes from games. It only comes from games on the ice. And that will be the big focus. Once they get teams and players on the ice playing games, it's not going to matter much if it's going to be in front of no fans. Fans will watch on TV and they'll be into it. But I don't know whether they'll be into a draft where Gary Bettman is sitting in his basement like Roger Goodell and having piped in booing like Roger Goodell did.
That was silly.
It was stupid.
What does it really matter where these guys are? I mean, to us, to you guys, I attended 3 drafts.
I think it was just a reality.
The drafts are great to be at, but that whole dynamic doesn't really translate well to television, to be honest. It doesn't. I mean, it's just like, watching the NHL draft on TV is really not all that much fun. As far as the environment goes. I mean, the concept of who's getting picked and stuff like that, and speculating or watching the highlights of players when they were juniors that are getting drafted, that kind of stuff is great. But like the actual arena atmosphere doesn't really have anything to do with the NHL draft. I don't think, or any draft for that matter, but maybe some in the NFL, but not the NHL.
Now, the interesting thing that came up this morning that I think we should talk about is this report. It was Kurt Overhart, the agent.
Yeah,
Kurt Overhart, who made a suggestion. And where have we heard this before? I think I've mentioned this maybe a few times in the history of the Buzzcast, and you can go back to the audio Buzzcast.
Oh yeah, going way back.
Kurt Overhart says, and he's advocating for the creation of an exceptional player to ease salary cap concerns when.
So they don't use the term franchise player? Is that the deal?
No, it's a Larry Bird exemption. It's
right.
God darn thing. And it's like, okay.
It's actually a little different than that. I've done a little digging, and I'm actually going to be talking to Kurt later.
Good.
And we'll have an article on Sportsology. So tomorrow we'll be able to talk at it more in length. But I think it's actually a little different than that. Okay.
I mean, now take it at face value of what Elliot Friedman reported about. It says teams using it could have to pay a luxury tax to those who don't. So that means if the Maple Leafs use this exceptional player status on Austin Matthews, and that wipes clean $11.634 million off their cap, then they probably will have to pay a percentage of that to teams that don't use exceptional status. So that means you're basically creating what Major League Baseball has in terms of a luxury tax that the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers pay into, that the Kansas City Royals and Pittsburgh Pirates and other teams benefit from.
Yeah,
similar to that, not exactly, but similar to that.
If this is a temporary solution, now we were talking about compliance buyouts in terms of adjusting things. If they implement something like this is the exception that benefits the teams that don't have players they want to buy out. A team like Toronto doesn't want to buy out Alex Kerfoot because he's 25 years old and he's a good young player.
Right.
But, it's either use it or lose it. If you buy him out to clear $3.5 million in cap space, how much does that really benefit you? If you can put Austin Matthews $11 plus million salary off the books and pay $3 million or say something like that.
Yeah,
I'll sign up in a minute if I'm Kyle Dubas.
Well, there's a few things that I take out of this, and I'll find out more later. The first one is this is more of a job creator than actually a compliance buyout, because not everybody from a compliance buyout gets another job.
Right.
So that's one thing. This would guarantee another job for a bunch of players, which is a positive. The other thing is this is also about not being temporary, Mike, but being a CBA evolving thing, because the CBA hasn't really evolved that much.
Right.
And for all those people, and I've been on some shows where they're like, well, hey, let's reopen the CBA. It's not that easy.
No.
And I don't think just because teams have time right now that they really want to open the CBA right now, but they could do an addendum. You do addendums to it all the time. And so if they were to vote on this, it would be like an addendum to sort of get it to evolve a little.
I mean, you're going to have the reality is in situations like this, you've got to be creative. You got to think outside the box. You got to do things that are different. You just have to. There's no option. I mean, it would be great if we lived in a world like everyone says. In the chat room, some people are saying, hockey in July is going to be weird. Yeah, it is. But you know what? Is it any weirder?
Better than no hockey? Yeah.
Weirder than what you do now when you got to get a sandwich or whatever.
Right.
It's just we're in that. That's where we are right now. So like the things that the luxuries of being able to say that we're not going to have luxury taxes or exemption players or franchise players, when some teams can pay that money, that we've been keeping them from paying that money, right? That we've been keeping Toronto and Philadelphia from paying extra, the Rangers from paying extra, as a way of like trying to prop the other teams up. And I think that it's kind of foolhardy in some ways because
because I'm not going to accuse any team of this, but I know what you're getting at. You could be a team that takes advantage of that.
Oh, for sure.
We know teams did when it first came out.
But at least there's a benefit to the smaller market. I mean, remember back in the day when Bobby Holik was getting $9 million from the Rangers and Matt Sundin and Matt Sundin and a number of Leaf players were getting overpaid before the salary cap. Was there a great level of success for those teams that spent $100 million or whatever it was, as opposed to teams that were budget teams? No, the Rangers missed the playoffs more than they made it. The Leafs didn't have.
I know, and the Flyers never won any Stanley Cups when they were spending all that money.
No, but I'll tell you what it would do. What it would do is force a team like Carolina, who does have a billionaire owner, to actually spend more if they want to win, because they can spend more. They're capable of doing it. They just don't.
Yeah, but this won't happen in the NHL because the amount of money that they'll be getting will not be sufficient for them to actually turn a profit, completely. But like in Major League Baseball, you see teams like Kansas City or Pittsburgh that are now in forever rebuilds because they're making a profit based on what they're getting from the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Red Sox, and they really don't have to go out and try to be able to make a profit because they're making a profit already not trying.
Right.
So that changes though because of the fact that that baseball has such a big television contract and hockey does.
Right. Exactly.
Right. They couldn't. That hockey. This money is not going to be enough to keep these places in business. It's not going to be like they're making there's not enough money without. They still have to do well enough to sell tickets. Basically, the NHL is still going to have to. You still have to put a team on the field to sell or ice to sell tickets.
What this tells you right now is more than ever the importance of the next, not just the next CBA, but the next television agreement between whoever, NBC, ESPN, whatever, and the NHL, because now you're facing, even if they play games, about a $500 million shortfall this year. They are going to need to hit a grand slam home run from their new television contract because right now the financial stability of the league is, and I'm not saying it's in trouble, but they need to hit a home run, and that's going to be really important for them.
Well, I was just talking to somebody the other day at the league, and they were saying that what you could really expect. The NHL is this other app where you can sort of predict things that are going to happen in the middle of games and stuff like that. As things are happening, you can not gamble, but gamble on like little things like face-offs or power play like that. If we live in a world again where there's not a lot of people actually on the we live in a world where there's not a lot of people at the games. This kind of stuff is going to become way, way bigger. Like concept of like, okay, I'm going to bet on NHL's app or whatever. That the Leafs are going to score a shorthanded goal here. The odds of that are 25-1 or something like that, or put $1 in, that kind of thing. That's what you're going to see. And it's stuff we talked about years and years and years ago.
And the league is gonna get a part of it because this factors into the analytics that they're doing with in terms of player tracking. They can
all the tracking is make no mistake about it. They're saying it's about that we want to making the teams be able to practice better. It's about gambling. It's always been about gambling, and that's the reality of it. And that's fine. It does help everybody else as well. But there's no question it's setting us up for this. And I think that's fine. I don't have a problem with that because
no. And you know what? I don't
money to go to tickets. Why not, get involved a little bit more in the game as it goes, in some way with little gambles here, little gambles there.
There seemed to be a little bit of pushback from the players before all this happened about player tracking because maybe they didn't see the benefit for them. Now, I think they will see the benefit because if it means more income coming into the league. I think it's one team in the NHL, New Jersey, had a FanDuel or whatever set up in the arena because it was legal in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised that if we see in the immediate future, not just them set up in arenas, but the NHL getting a piece of the action to be able to sign up to say, okay, who's going to score the first goal? I get 8-1 on Austin Matthews. Boom.
Yeah, right. There, and that's it. And it's that, and it's fun. It's going to be fun for people to get involved with. It's like anybody who's ever done the Super Bowl pools or whatever, when you're a Super Bowl house and the boxes and things like that. This is what it's going to be like. Thomas has a question in here, but he asked before this. How will the ratings be in the summer months when people are out more? I get that fear. I really do. Because in the summer, like I'm, at the shore, we're usually at the beach, but I think that it's sort of like if we're doing it like this, people aren't going to be out at all. I don't think. First of all, I think the ratings are going to be great because people aren't going to be out. I don't think in the summer. In the summer, I think people are going to still be home a lot. I
think that the absence of games for 2-3 months is going to build up a hunger that people are not going to care that it's hot outside. They're going to want to watch games, especially for their own teams.
And even if you're not watching it live, there's still people are going to be watching them. They're going to be.
Yeah, that's where I disagree. I think it's got to be live. I mean, the one thing is like
you want to watch it live, but I'm thinking people who aren't going to see it live, there's still going to be a huge amount of people watching it streaming later or whatever if they are doing something, right?
I mean, I'm skeptical. I mean, because I don't find any way that is going to be kept secret. In terms of I only want to watch a game that I can watch while it's happening. It's like I'll go back and check the highlights of a game that I didn't see because I'm interested in the result and see what happened. But I don't want to watch the entire game. And the whole point of this is watching the entire game and getting revenue from the ads that are on the game. Yeah. So that's why I'm like, the one thing that might be a problem is if the plan right now is to play games. What they're saying is like at 1, at 4:30, at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Then you're going to probably have the teams that are from smaller markets playing in those 1 o'clock games because, they're going to want the Torontos or the New Yorks or whoever playing primetime games because they can get the most revenue out of those.
Yeah,
games.
you're going to have that. And can you imagine how much fun that'll be for everybody? I mean, people will love it. I mean, people will be completely love it. It'll be absolutely a blast to have 3 games a day, that kind of stuff. For people who are working from home, or what have you, it'll help get through things. I think that's what it's about. So I did travel back in my alternate reality to find out the ends of the first round, Mike, and I'm sad that Russ isn't here right now for this, but
well, we're fully expecting the Leafs to have lost in 7 games after being up 3-0. So
let's get to that, shall we? Okay, so here we go. We'll start in the Western Conference, okay, where if you remember, Vegas had beaten Nashville. The other series that was going on was Edmonton, Vancouver, and that ended in 6. So we have Edmonton, Vegas in the second round. That's one of the matchups. Okay. Mm-hmm. Also out there, St. Louis, despite really struggling with Calgary, won that series in 7 games. Dallas and Colorado. Dallas won that one in 6 games, which was really surprising. Colorado, very disappointing playoff appearance. So Dallas and St. Louis in the second round. So those are the 2 matchups over there. Then over here, the Caps had swept the Islanders, or they had swept Carolina. Sorry, they had swept Carolina. The Flyers were up 3-2 in the Penguin series and did end up winning that series in 6. So we have the Flyers in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's true. It happened.
Mm-hmm.
But the crazy thing about that series, all the last two Flyers wins come on the heels of Alex Lyon playing unbelievable. Because if you remember, Brian Elliott was got shelled a couple times. Oh no, Brian Elliott got hurt, and then we had Carter Hart playing well, but not playing too well, and he ended up getting. They said he was hurt because they think he might be hurt. So they were giving Alex Lyon, and Alex Lyon was amazing against the Penguins. And Alex the Lion is just takes the, and then we have the Flyers and Capitals second round over there, and finally the Bruins had beaten the Islanders in 6 games as we checked. So the Bruins were waiting around, and the Leafs were up 3-2 on Tampa.
They were up 3-0.
They were up 3-0. Tampa did indeed send that to Game 7, but in Game 7, Toronto prevails. Amazingly enough, Toronto comes up with a win. And
Austin Matthews comes off crutches and walks onto the ice.
Austin Matthews, did play in that game. But people are questioning if he's healthy because he's got like 2 points in the whole series. He's not 100% after that hit from Hedman still. But so we have a second round matchup of Toronto and Boston.
Gee, where have we seen that one before?
And so we'll have fun following that series. So that's where we are right now. So again, Flyers, Caps, Bruins, Leafs, Vegas, Edmonton, St. Louis, Dallas. There's your 4 second round matchups. Those series start tonight. I will be back and giving you some information as I get it from the area. So,
okay. Tomorrow we will have Matt Kelman on. He Boston area reporter. We'll talk about the Bruins and some other stuff in the NHL. So that'll have another guest for the first half of the show. For sure, that would be great. And so until then, stay safe. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow with Matt.